Hello, my beautiful people. Welcome back to Redoctoring. I'm your host, Dr. Diane, and this is the podcast that allows you to be a different kind of doctor. Today, I have with me a very special guest. I have Sarah. Sarah is so interesting, and I can't wait for you to hear more about her journey. She's going to introduce herself properly, but just to give you a brief summary, she is a chiropractor turned clinical clinician coach. Yes. She's a chiropractor turned clinician coach. So she works with clinicians and she helps them think beyond their job. So yes, I'm so glad to have you here, Sarah. How are you doing?
Thank you so much. And I love that description. Thank you. It's a new one that I can use. Help you think beyond your job. Thank you so much for having me. And
Definitely.
I love what you're doing with your podcast as well. I think that idea of our career can look different to maybe what we thought it might, or what other people around us, what their careers look like, I think is so cool that you're doing that. So thank you so much for having me on as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. So let's start with your journey. You went from being a chiropractor to a coach. I'm sure when you got into university, this was not the plan. So how did this whole process happen for you?
Exactly. I think a lot of people can relate to the idea of not really knowing what you did want to do. Like I had career, I would say like indecision or being unsure about things. I had that from a very, I would say, early point. Like when I was deciding what to study, I was like, I have no idea. I literally was choosing between healthcare and fine arts. Like those were the two paths. And it never even, like certain professions that I'm exposed to now, I don't even remember even thinking of that. And just as a silly example, I went to shadow a architect. And one of the ladies at the architecture firm said, if you don't love the smell of cement, don't become an architect. So that was just for me. I was like, oh, okay, well, I don't love the smell of cement. So rule that out for me. It was like the process, there was no like strategy to it. I didn't have any guidance on like, how am I supposed to know what I want to do with my career? I would just almost listen to random things like that other people said. And eventually the reason I eventually went into chiropractic is a friend of mine, her family loved chiropractors and went to see chiropractors regularly. And I went to go shadow a chiropractor. And interestingly, what stood out for me was this was the first person I saw that looked like they were enjoying their career. They were like excited to be at work, and the way that they talked about what they were doing, it was like the first person that I'd seen. And so I think I almost gravitated towards that because of that. I was like, oh, well, I want to enjoy my career. But there was a lot of, from quite early on, starting to realize that it's not quite the path that I necessarily wanted to follow, but I didn't know what I did want to follow. So it wasn't like, oh, I'm clear that I want to do something else. Medicine was also one of the paths that I almost went down. I considered probably every career under the sun, but because of that early kind of questioning and trying to figure that out, I had many years that I was kind of exploring careers and like, how do people choose careers? What makes a fulfilling career? And so I was exploring that a lot for myself. I eventually did graduate as a chiropractor. I worked for about 7 years as a chiropractor. And one of the things that we can maybe touch on as well is when I was deciding whether to leave my career, and I don't even necessarily consider myself as fully not a chiropractor anymore. I do see myself practicing maybe in some shape or form, but it'll be very different to a sort of typical chiropractic practice. And so when I was considering leaving, this is from, I think it's called Design Your Life by Bill Burnett and Evans, Dave Evans, I think. And they encourage you to design different prototypes of your career, like different directions and ways that you think your life or career might go. And you design the best possible version of each one. And so I designed the best possible version of a chiropractic career. Like I went into what exactly would make me fulfilled. What parts of my job do I love? What parts of my job do I not like so much? What aspects energize me? What fulfills me? I love that your career matrix also gives you a bit of that kind of going into those questions. So it felt like I did it in a very intentional way, and that really helped me leave with, I didn't leave because I hate chiropractic or that chiropractic is a terrible career to go into. I think all of these things are so personal, and you have to find what path you want to be on. So that's kind of the long story of how I got to that. And then there were a few different reasons why coaching kind of stood out for me. I had been exposed to it from a personal perspective, like all the breakdowns that happen, all the existential crises, and all of those things that are supposed to apparently happen in midlife. I had them very early on. And coaching helped me through that from a personal perspective. And then I was watching this documentary one day where, kind of on the documentary, they'll give the person's title. And the title was health coach. And I was like, wow, I never knew that existed. It's like combining coaching, which I absolutely love from a personal perspective, and my passion for health. And so I went and did a health coaching certification that specialized in sleep, stress management, and recovery. And I thought, worst case scenario, worst case, but if it doesn't become a new career, it at least will help my patients, because a lot of my patients were burnt out, stressed out, not resting enough. And so that was kind of the intention, like maybe I'll just use it to make myself a better clinician. But when I started actually coaching, I was like, no, this is the thing that I want to do. It like clicked for me in a way that nothing else ever had. But I think also at that point, I knew myself so much at such a deeper level that something could click in a way that maybe previously, like I wouldn't have necessarily found that. So that's how I got to the coaching. And then when I started my coaching practice, I knew that the people that I most wanted to help were my fellow clinicians, because I'd kind of been doing that just naturally with my colleagues, with my friends. I'd be like, let's brainstorm your career and let's find your strengths and how to bring that out in your practice. Like I kind of did that naturally because it was so exciting to me. And I also knew that a lot of the things that I struggled with as a clinician, many other clinicians struggled with as well. The people pleasing, perfectionism, not being able to rest, studying all hours to try and have the perfect, know everything before you actually allow yourself to enjoy your work, like all those things, imposter syndrome. I knew that other clinicians really struggled with that as well. And so I could use my personal experience through all these different aspects and create that. So that's the long story of how I got there.
Oh, that's so profound. I just want to encourage anyone listening, if you want to hear Sarah's complete full breakdown of her career journey, she posted it on her podcast, The Clinician's Journey. I remember listening to that episode, and what stood out for me was how you mentioned you were battling with wanting to stay in chiropractic versus going into medicine. There's the idea of when you go into medicine, when you go into chiropractic, it's because you didn't necessarily achieve everything for medicine. And it felt like a very big identity struggle that you were going through.
Yes.
How did you overcome that in chiropractic?
Yeah, that's such a great one. Because that, I think I talked about, that was sort of the catalyst to me considering medicine, because we walked into our second year physiology, first or second year, I can't remember. I think it was second year physiology lecture. And our physiology lecturer was a medical doctor. And as we walked in, he said, "Oh, the chiropractors, you're just here because you couldn't get into medicine." And that was the first time, I didn't understand, how the world saw certain things. I didn't understand that kind of hierarchy of this is who's smart or not. I was like, I just chose the profession that I thought I would enjoy. And then I was exposed to someone can judge me and my intellect based on my profession. And at the time, I mean, this is early 20s, you care a lot about what everybody thinks. And I had this thing, and I often say to people, our unwanted identities, those are very strong forces in our lives. So for me, one of the biggest unwanted identities was not smart. I had based a lot of my identity on being smart. And so when I was exposed to someone who assumed that I wasn't smart based just off of my professional choice, choice of profession, it was this moment for me, oh my gosh, I don't want to be in a profession that people think that of. And so that was the catalyst to kind of explore medicine, which, as I talk about as well, you want to love your reasons for doing a certain career. And that is not a great reason. I'm not going to be motivated enough to go through the grueling aspects of medicine if my reason is I just want to prove that I'm smart, which many of us end up doing in certain professions. But yeah, so I think only later I really overcame that. I think with the personal coaching and with all those other existential crises, a lot of that came in. Like I got exposed to a lot of the identities that I was trying to kind of run away from. I was exposed to a lot of my very people-pleasing kind of tendencies, and that was showing up in my relationship, and it was really destroying my relationship. And so I became more aware of these things through that process of kind of self-awareness coaching, things like that. And then it's kind of a process of finding safety in people judging you, finding safety in the fact that some people are going to be wrong about you, and that's okay. And that concept of what reasons am I going to be so proud of that I chose my career from? Like I wouldn't be particularly proud if I chose my career based from a place of, I just want to prove that I'm smart. I don't think I would be fulfilled. I don't think I would be happy. I don't think I would ever get to the point that I actually feel like I would probably go further, and then I'd go further and I'd specialize and I'd like try to get to the point. And that's often when we're trying to look at it from the outside for other people to validate us and make sure that they think we're smart, it never quite gets there. It never quite feels like enough validation. And so, yes, part of that was the process of learning how to truly believe for myself that I am smart, define what smart actually means for myself, and then also that process of becoming more comfortable with other people thinking what they might think.
Sure. No, that's so deep. I think when you mentioned about the unwanted identities, the unwanted but unwelcomed identities that we have of ourselves, it reminds me of how they say that people tend to gravitate towards things more of a push than a pull. Like it's because of negative factors that push you into something instead of the positives. And just to bring it into
Exactly.
careers, I wonder how many of us actually are in places not because of the positive things that attract us, but because of the negative things that push us. It makes me also just
Exactly.
wonder, is that a good enough reason to be in those spaces if there's more negative things pushing you there as opposed to positive things pulling you there?
Yeah, that's such a good way to describe it. One of my coaches, when I was actually trying to make the decision whether to leave my job, um, the analogy that she used is like you don't want to be running away from a bear, you want to be running towards your lover. And so think about, instead of what do I not want, think about what do I want? How can I make this decision from what I do want to do? Because what I also find is when people do, and like you said, like, is it a good enough reason? It could be good enough to motivate you in the short term, but it never quite satisfies. And what I find people do is they tend to jump around. So they'll leave a job because it's so uncomfortable, and they'll go to another job. And then something will be uncomfortable about that job. And then they'll move to something else, or they'll move to a different career. This happens with moving countries. It happens with moving cities. It happens with us going to a different relationship. There are parallels in all of those places that when we just are trying to get away from discomfort, what happens is, firstly, we never are comfortable enough to look at actually what is happening here. Like, what are the skills that I maybe need to grow here? What discomfort do I need to be able to handle more? Like, let's say, for example, you are in a genuinely toxic work environment. That might be a situation that you want to get out quicker. But I would still encourage people to look at what actually happened. Let me look at how did I end up in a place like that? Like, how would I prevent in the future finding a similar place? Like, what were maybe the warning signs that I didn't see, or questions that I could maybe ask differently when I'm interviewing for the next one, or whatever the case is? Or maybe, was I struggling with boundaries? Were there difficult conversations that I was not willing to have? All these kinds of things, I like think about it as like your career, and everything that you come up against in your career is your human experience. It is your growth edge. It's your adult psychological development. Like, I love actually the parallel with what you're saying, like, being the permission to be a different kind of doctor, because it has so many parallels to what is called in adult developmental psychology. Yes, we are still developing. It's called self-authorship, which is the stage that most of us are moving into. The socialized mind is the one that we are usually in kind of early 20s, late 20s, but some people never kind of go beyond that. But socialize is essentially, I look to the world to get my sense of self. Like I look to what other people are doing and I try and kind of like mimic that, or I try and look for validation or, approval. I want to fit in. That's a very socialized mind. And that's normal, that's healthy. But at a certain point, we start to what they call self-author. And this is what you're essentially doing in your career, right? You're starting to self-author your career. You're starting to look at, oh, this is how everybody else does it, but this is how I want to do it. And I'm learning and I'm building skills from all my different experiences and I'm growing in that way. And I'm actually designing my career rather than just finding a path that's already set out for me. But yeah, I just think of it as like, whatever the reason was that you got into your career and whatever expectations you had of what it would be like, now that you're in your career or in your job or in your country or with the relationship that you're in, it's like now you want to decide, almost like redecide. Like you're not just carrying on because this is what you studied and like you don't want to waste the money or because other people are doing it or because you're like that push thing, like I'm just scared of what people will think if I leave a career like medicine, right? Like there's certain judgments that may come with that. We want to redecide. I'm either staying in my career intentionally and I'm figuring it out and it doesn't have to be forever, but for right now, I'm staying in it. I'm figuring out, I'm learning, I'm using things that challenge me as this is my growth age. This is my chance to develop psychologically. I'm learning from it. I might make the next experience different, or I'm deciding intentionally that I'm going to leave. But either way, it's like I'm doing it on purpose. Like I'm not just going with it or running away from something. So that's kind of how I think about that.
I love how you said every day it feels like you need to recommit to it. And it makes me think about how people describe
Mm.
marriages, how it's not a I do on one day, but it's a I do every single day. And that's quite
Mm. Oh,
interesting.
I
It
love that.
is.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Something that I've heard you also mention on your podcast is how you don't help people decide whether to leave, stay, or change, but you help them think through the process that they're already having in their brains. Can you break down what you see a lot of clinicians going through with regards to the process of trying to redefine their careers?
Yeah. 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 So I will I will usually kind of see, it's almost like I want to know what you're thinking about all the different options. So I don't, the way that I say, or maybe the reason that I say I don't decide is more like I don't have any particular agenda. I'm not like, I'm trying to help everybody leave healthcare, or I'm trying to make everyone stay in healthcare, or I'm trying to like have a particular agenda. It's like, I want to help you find what's right for you. And when I have a clinician client, what I will do is I'll try and ask different questions to figure out what they think about certain things. So I think that it's just as much of a pity when a clinician leaves healthcare, um, because they had a certain perception of what they were supposed to be like, maybe what the job was supposed to be like, or that they have some idea that they're not meant for this. I think you also mentioned that, like, you start to doubt, like, is this even right for me? Am I cut out for this? All these kinds of things. Like, it's just to me as much of a pity that someone leaves from that kind of place than if someone forces themselves to stay because of that kind of idea of like, no, this is what I studied, or this is, I want to prove to people that I can do it, that I can cut it. So I try and help people figure out, like, what is it like, what thoughts are you having about your actual career? What thoughts are you having about different options? Because one of the other things that we tend to do is think of this amazing, like, dream version of the other thing that we're imagining, whether that's a job or a relationship or a profession. We think like everything is going to be amazing there. And that's what I want to get clear on. And there's different things like looking at, kind of like I mentioned, how I designed like the most ideal version of my current career. You want to do that so that you're kind of comparing two things. You're comparing the dream version of what you're doing now with the dream version of what you're doing then. But the other way to do this is comparing all this stuff that you're struggling with in your current situation, whatever that is for you, and think about, life is going to always deal me problems and struggles. And like, that's just, life is always going to be a combination of good and bad. And that's Like, if we actually take a step back and think about it, that is actually what we want from our life. We wouldn't want a life that everything just goes smoothly and everything is perfect and I'm happy all the time. That's also not a normal human experience, to be just happy all the time. Like, we want to experience the whole range of human emotions. We want to experience the whole range of human life. Like, we want to be alive in our lives. We're not trying to create this picture perfect situation where I'm never unhappy and I'm never uncomfortable and I'm never struggling with anything. So if you think of this new version, whatever you're imagining, whether it's a job or career or relationship, try and imagine, like, what are likely going to be the things that I'm struggling with there? What are likely to be the things that I come up against there? What are the things that are maybe going to be the same as where I am now? And how would I deal with them differently in this new situation? So you can either kind of make your current version a dream one to like compare it to the dream version that you're imagining of the other option, or you can almost anticipate what are going to be the struggles and problems in the new one as well, so that you're comparing problem and struggle with problem and struggle as well, and not just one side of that. So we want to kind of look at the whole picture, and that's part of making sure that you're not just running away from discomfort, because there's going to be another version of discomfort there. It's like you're choosing which discomfort you want and what is meaningful to you, which direction do you want to grow, that sort of thing.
I believe at the end of the day, everything is going to be hard and you just need to pick your hard. But what a lot
Exactly.
of people don't know with regards to careers is how hard is hard supposed to be?
Mm,
How,
that's
like,
such a good
where do
question.
you draw the line with,
Mm,
is this tough because, yes, this is part of the process, or is this tough because, no, now I'm supposed to be going somewhere else?
mm,
And that's
exactly.
difficult.
Exactly. Yeah, I had a similar kind of question when I was, because one of the reasons I stayed so long doing what I was doing, even though I had doubts about it, is like I thought it made me less resilient and less like loyal, less what is the other word, like responsible, if I left. And so, and because I'm also a very like multi-passionate person, I have so many different interests, I do a lot of different things, and so I was like, "Oh, I can't do that with my career as well, like I have to be responsible in some areas." So I had like all these, again, another like unwanted identity, right? Like that was part of why I was thinking like, oh, almost like this thing of, am I supposed to stay and figure this out? Like, is that the thing that I'm supposed to do? Which I think that is where we start to think like, is this normal hard? Is it like, am I supposed to be? Is this like, am I supposed to be trying to figure this out? And I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. Like, even when I talk about like not doing it from a place of like fear or whatever, like I'm also like, you're an adult, you get to do what you want. Like if you if you just think, I'm sick of this job, I just want to go and have something new, like it's totally fine. It's not a moral thing. It's not like, you're a good or bad person for whatever you decide. You're an adult, you can do whatever you like. It's just more to use it as an opportunity to get to know yourself better, to understand like, what is it about this that I don't like? What is it about that is hard? And this is actually something that my boyfriend introduced me to, because this was like part of a relationship struggle. And he said something along the lines of like, he believes that even if people are breaking up, they do it together and they do it with love. They do it connected. And I was like, it like blew my mind. I was like, this is not the picture that I have of breakups.
Mm.
And so it's this idea of like, I want to learn to love where I am first. And not because I should, not because it's the good thing to do, not because I'm somehow like morally better for doing that, but just because I know that there's so much to learn here and it'll never be wasted. Like whatever way that I learn to make this less hard or to live through the hard, those lessons, that growth, that inner awareness and growth, right? So I don't think it's ever wasted to do that. But I also think we really have to make sure that we're not thinking about it as some kind of, there's a right or wrong answer here, or there's a morally better thing to do here. It's more just like that's also why we kind of bring it back to that question of like, where's your growth edge? Is your growth edge to stick it through with the hard and be uncomfortable and do that? Or is your growth edge actually to finally say like, I'm not doing this anymore, right? Like, I'm not going to just like force myself to be resilient and force myself to stay uncomfortable when like maybe your growth is to actually follow your desires or actually follow the things that you enjoy, or finally give yourself permission to do something different. Like, your growth edge could be in either direction. And I think people have to identify for themselves what their growth edge is and whether they actually want to be leaning into their growth edge, because there's no have to.
It sounds like you're a therapist for careers, because this sounds so, everything you're saying is just so profound.
He's so sweet. I love that term. They're a
No, you should
career
put it,
therapist.
yeah, you should put it onto your Instagram bio.
Yes, exactly. You're giving me so many good descriptions.
Sure. And I think, yeah, just going back to the whole career, the self-authorship journey, I think embracing discomfort and also what you wanted to become as part of the journey. But we villainize discomfort to always mean something negative instead of something positive. Now, coming back to your own personal journey, from the time that you graduated with chiropractic until going into coaching for clinicians, how many years was that?
There was 7 years, and I did various different, even like within my career, I did a bunch of different locum jobs, the good and bad and the ugly of locum jobs. I had my own practice for a while. I practiced as a volunteer at World Spine Care in Botswana for a little while. And then I went to the Netherlands for 3 years. And that was kind of the last, after those 3 years in the Netherlands practicing as a chiropractor. That's when I decided to come back to South Africa and also to shift careers. So it all kind of happened as one decision.
Wow. But no, it was a journey nonetheless.
Yes.
And it took you 7 years. Wow. I think even for myself, as I'm trying to re-decide and re-navigate what I want my career to look like, I sometimes fall into the trap of I have to know that the next step is going to be the right step. That if I go
Exactly.
into this thing and it's not it, then I've wasted that experience.
Yes.
How can you reword that with regards to your career
Mm.
experience?
I think, I mean, there's so many things here. I think wasting time is a big fear for so many people. And part of that is like the way that we are socialized. And if you think of school and you think of your training as a healthcare professional, it's all very clear. It's like you do this grade and then you do these tests. And if you have these marks, then you can progress to the next one. And then you're very clear on what your homework is. You're very clear on what the assignments are. You know how to pass this thing. It's all very like step by step and it's laid out for you and it's very clear. Same with university, a little less clear there, but it's made like you have the general gist of like how you're supposed to progress
Mm,
through this. And I think so many of us, as soon as we get out into like the working world, suddenly everything is uncertain. And suddenly we don't have any clear pathway. And there's so many different options. And so just knowing that, I think, is one part of it, just knowing that like it's totally normal, because most of your life things were a lot clearer and more like set out for you in a way. And now you're in the new world of like making decisions in different directions. But then also that aspect of like, when part of the reason we find it so hard to make decisions is we imagine this path is going to take me down like the worst possible life I could imagine. I'm probably going to be absolutely miserable. I'm probably going to be alone. I'm probably going to be like, I don't know, homeless. Like we go to like extreme. And then there's like, the other one is going to be amazing. I'm going to be like the happiest person ever. My life is going to be incredible. And we almost have to like catch ourselves of like, oh, that's why this decision is so hard. I think that one of these options is going to be like incredible and the other one is going to be absolutely miserable. And I'm trying to make the right decision. I'm trying to figure out like which one is going to lead me to the good life, right? And so part of what we can do to take the pressure off that is like, I'm going to figure it out either way. And I'm going to have an incredible life either way. And so they both just become, it's like, I'm going to have struggles either way, and I'm going to have amazingness either way. It's like I just pick which one I want to do. So that's part of it. That also takes a lot of the pressure off it, is to realize that, oh, there isn't actually this perfect and this terrible one. There's like two options that are probably going to have 50% amazing and 50% terrible. So then you start to make a decision from a different place. That might be what your growth edge is. Which one takes you closer to where you feel like you want to grow? Who is the person that you want to become in this next chapter? And which option is going to build that person? And you can make it from such a different place than like, I have to get it right or wrong.
Wow. That actually reminds me of a popular saying online. I don't know if you've heard it, but it's about doing things for the plot.
Yes, exactly.
Yes,
Exactly.
it's not
Yes,
about
that's such a
making
cool
the
way to
right
think about it.
decision, but you need to
Exactly.
do what's going to make the best story time for your friends and whatnot.
Exactly.
And
I love
it's a
that.
very possibly reckless way of looking at things. But at the end of the day, everything is going to be a story.
Exactly. Exactly. It's like, and it also reminds us that these things don't have to be as heavy and as serious as we make them out to be. It's like, I can do it for the plot. Like, it just feels so much more like, I'm just trying to make a cool story here. Like, that feels so much more,
Exactly.
so much lighter, so much more. And also, I think like we have to, part of the thing that we're doing often is like defining the things that we say. So we just say something like, it's going to waste time. But have we ever defined what it actually means to waste time? Like, if you think of what it actually means to you to waste time, it starts to kind of fall apart a little bit. Because you're like, oh, well, wasting time means, let's say, for example, you think that wasting time means I get to the end of this journey and it's actually not what I wanted to do. And you see that as wasting time. But is that actually true? Like, your assumption is,
Mm-mm.
if I'd gone down the other path, I would have been happy at this point. But you could never know that. You literally have no idea. And so I almost think about it as, I'm going to decide ahead of time that nothing I do in my life is ever a waste of time. And I'm going to decide that now. And so my decision becomes different. I make it from a different place. And also, I know that even if I get to the end of this particular path and it's not what I wanted to do, like you can imagine for me, right? I got to the end of 7 years of practicing as a chiropractor and I decided, like, I actually want to do a different direction. That doesn't mean that any of that was wasted. Like, I now have all of the knowledge that I gained from there, all of those lessons, like I've talked about, like anything that you learn along the way, you're going to take that to the next thing anyway. Like, all the stuff I'm talking about, it came from that, right? Like, there's no way that it's wasted. The people that I work with came from that path. So I think, also have to almost like, all these terms that we use, like wasting time, the right or wrong decision, start to explore what that actually means, at least for you. Like, how would you define it? How do you know whether the decision is right or wrong? How do you know whether you've wasted time? And then you start to, this is, I guess, part of that journey of self-authorship, is starting to define things for yourself, which makes a huge difference.
It really does. It really does. It puts things into perspective, and it puts experiences definitely into perspective, that it doesn't mean you have to win the prize at the end of the day, but even the lessons
Mm,
or the scars you got in this particular experience is worth it because
exactly.
it helped
Yeah,
navigate your path. Something
exactly.
interesting that a lot of people feel like holds them back from making decisions is family
Mm,
choices, not family choices per se, but family's opinions. How
mm.
did your family take you moving into coaching?
Yeah, I'm quite lucky to be in a family that also had their own career journeys. My dad trained as an advocate, and then, yeah, he did his degree and then he didn't practice. He went to England and he was a teacher at a school. He actually went into a Zen monastery. He became a Zen monk for a couple of years, and then he started running Zen retreats. And when he came back to South Africa, then he decided to reignite his law career, and he went further, did his bars, and became an advocate. And then he set up a law clinic in where I live, in Colesberg. He set up the first human rights law clinic there. And he was doing that and running Zen retreats. And so, like, he always had this different career path. And now he's 77 and he's officially retired from his law career, but he's still running retreats now. So that's what they do, full time. So I remember him saying to me, like, he feels like the Zen aspect has always been his life's work. And he just did law as kind of, that was to pay the bills and to take care of his daughters. And so I always had that, I don't want to say sadness, but I almost had this thing of like, my dad could have spent his life doing his life's work. And I don't think his career as an advocate, I also don't believe is wasted in any way. And he brought, both into each. But I did have some kind of this sadness of like, just in general, that people have this desire to do something else, or they have these gifts but they just don't have the opportunities to bring them to the world. Like that is something that I feel is so, like, I would love more people to be able to follow whatever their life's work is. But yes, he's so he had a bit of an alternative career route anyway. And my mom was a teacher. She went further into doing things for people with speech and hearing deficits, and she also helps my dad run the retreats. And she was put into the deep end to be the farmer because we moved to a farm, and my dad wasn't going to farm. He was away doing his law work. And so my mom was the farmer now, and she was
Oh.
from the ocean. So she had zero idea how to farm. And so that became kind of her new career that she didn't necessarily choose. So we've always kind of had a little bit of like an alternative. Yeah, I had a very kind of, unique upbringing. And so I think I never actually even I don't even think I asked them, to be honest, but they seemed fine with it.
Sure. No, that's so interesting. I mean, before it became, now it's called a portfolio career, but it sounds like your dad had a portfolio career before the term was even coined, which is something that's so
Exactly.
cool. Like, you
Yeah, that is
don't,
actually so cool.
like I had another guest, Dr. Amy. She's an emergency physician, and then she's also in public health, and she's basically merging the two
Amazing.
together because that's where she finds that's her place to be. And her reason is she has a deep, profound reason to help people. And it sounds like your dad also did the same. He was helping. There was just different methods and different ways of going about it.
Yeah, that's such a good point. That's such a good point. And I think this is also something I tell in one of those episodes about my career journey. Is one of the other catalysts that had me thinking about going to a career in medicine was, and specifically emergency medicine, which like people who
Oh,
know me, like they're
wow.
like, you know, you would not do well in emergency medicine. But I believe that that's how I would be helping the most, because it was like life and death scenarios. Like I need to be in that type of situation, even though personality wise and just like pretty much everything would not be suited for that. But the reason that I was thinking that is like, that is helping more than what I'm doing now, because it's life and death. And in that same time, I attended a chiropractic seminar, and one of the ladies that was a speaker had just actually done the opposite career switch. So she was an emergency physician, and she had done the opposite career to being a chiropractor. And what she said is she got so frustrated with seeing things too late. Like it's in the life and death scenario. And she was like, I want to help people earlier. I want to be able to help them with their lifestyle. I want to be able to help them prevent these things. And so she made the switch to chiropractic. And I was like, oh, that's so interesting. Like just the way that she thinks about, and that again goes back to like discovering what you think about these different options and kind of questioning that and finding different perspectives. Like this was like the moment for me where I was just like, oh, this is a completely opposite perspective to what I was thinking. I was defining, again, defining terms. I was defining helping by its life or death. And that's not the way that she saw helping. And so, yeah, I think that's such a good point of like, we often, because we're healthcare professionals, we get into this profession often from a place of, I'm a helper. I want to help people. And we often have an idea of what that has to look like. And I also like, this is one thing that I often kind of like think about. We hear the term helping profession. And I had said to my friend, like, because I'm in a helping profession, and she did graphic design, and now she coaches entrepreneurs. So she had no like reference of the term helping profession. She was like, wait, what profession isn't a helping profession? And I was like, oh, that's actually such an interesting question. Like we
That's
just kind
so
of used to that
interesting.
term. And I was like, oh, most people in their careers are helping other people in some way, shape or form. So yeah, I love that idea of like you can be helping and it might look like different things, but ultimately you're still helping people.
No, I love how your friend actually said that we're all helping each other at the end of the day. You just need
Exactly.
to find your unique reason for helping in this
Mm,
particular way, which is so interesting.
exactly.
Quite
Exactly.
interesting.
And I will also say one of the things that I think is really important for us to explore as healthcare professionals, especially if part of the reason that you got into it is to help. Like, I remember that's the main reason I didn't go the fine arts route, because I was like, no, that's not helping anyone. I have to be helping people. So I went into the healthcare route. And it's so interesting to think of that now. But also, I think part of the thing that makes us at risk of things like burnout, of things like overworking, of things like not being able to rest, of imposter syndrome, all those kinds of things, is that we often tie our own worthiness to how much we are helping. And so when we
Sure.
are helping this much, and however we perceive that, however we have defined helping, if we don't achieve that each time, we feel worthless, or we feel like we're not doing our job properly, or we're like, what is the point of all of this? And so I think helping is one of those terms that I think is so important for us as healthcare professionals to define for ourselves. What does it actually mean to help a patient? We think it's like getting everything right, right? Like, only if
Mm,
I get everything right, I know everything there is to know about what's happening with this person's condition. I knew exactly how to like save them and never have them have pain again or suffering or anything. Then I've helped them. Like, that is a very high bar for, like, if I'm only going to be fulfilled and happy and enjoying my career when I've reached that, like, I'm setting myself up to not enjoy my career and to overwork and to feel burned out and feel unfulfilled. So I think that's one of the terms that we can really self-author and really start to explore for ourselves.
wow. No, I love that. I really do. I think from the time of being in med school, I feel like it positions us to only want to strive for everything being correct. So
Mm.
when everything is not correct, it feels like a failure. And then like you failed the patient. I know it's something that I've been through. But it's quite profound, I must say.
Absolutely. I think that's part of almost like that, in the same way that our school and our university prepared us that life was going to be very step by step and very clear. It also prepared us for there's a right answer and there's a wrong answer. We also learned that at university, right?
Mm.
And I remember seeing this post. Sorry, I can't credit the person. I don't remember who it was, but they were talking about, I think it was in emergency medicine. They were saying that we need to start training students that they can do everything right and the person can still die. Because when we're training, what we do is, oh, if you do everything right, the patient's life is saved, or you heal their pain, or like whatever. Like, we almost tie us doing our job well with the patient's outcomes. And they were just making the point that we need to start training students in healthcare that it is possible to do everything really, really well, to do everything perfectly, and your patient can still not get better. Your patient can still be in pain. Your patient can still die. Your patient can still be very unhappy with your care. Like, we need to almost be prepared for that. And so I think that's such a good point. Like, we could actually, and even if we don't necessarily change that about universities, I think it's just helpful to know, like, oh, in university, there was a very clear right and wrong answer. And it's just not like that in real practice. No, I very seldom know whether I did the right thing. I very seldom know whether I gave an adequate like level of care. I very seldom know whether I could have done something better or someone else would have done it better than me. Like, it's so gray. And I think preparing ourselves mentally for that, and also like realizing that's also one of our growth areas, is like being more uncomfortable with the gray and with the uncertainty. And again, like, that's the human experience. That is what life is like, right? Like, that's how your relationships are. That's how being in community is. Like, all of these things are just as gray and uncertain. That's actually normal. The way that we learn stuff in
Wow.
school and university is actually the abnormal, right? So I think just knowing that can be really helpful.
Definitely, definitely, most definitely. I think it also just shifts the conversation into focus on what you have control over, which is your inputs.
Mm,
Because the outputs,
absolutely.
it's so vast, you actually never really know what way it's going to go.
Exactly, exactly. One of the exercises I sometimes get people to do is write down every single factor you can think of that affects whether that patient gets better or not. And every single one, like every detail about their lifestyle, every detail about their history, every detail about the particular technique that you're using, every detail about you as a professional, health-wise, mental-wise, all that kind of stuff, all the details about the patient themselves, like all the factors, and you just list them out. And when you think that you've written down everything, try and find 10 more. The environment, right? The country that they grew up, all these things, like, and you will start to realize like how many factors there are. And then you start to identify, okay, which ones of these are actually in my control? It's very few. Very, very few.
Wow.
And we're often focusing on like, I have to get all of these things right. But in some sense, like, why would we ever expect that that's possible?
Because
It's
that's not life.
like ridiculous. Exactly. Exactly. Define ourselves based on that extent of helping. And that extent of helping is completely not based on real life.
Sure. Oh, wow. No, that's actually, you're saying a lot of deep things. You're saying a lot of deep things that I need to go and think about. Another thing that I've recently been thinking a lot more about is how I remember in med school where a lot of people said that medicine or choosing to become doctors per se was their purpose. What do you think about people who find their purpose in their job? Is it something
Mm.
that should be more normalized or should be less normalized or
Yeah, that's
yeah.
such a good question. And you'll definitely have people on both sides. Um, I think it's both. um, I think we need to normalize reality, which is some people have a very strong sense of what they want to do, and it is to do with their career, and other people don't. Other people don't find purpose necessarily in their career, but they find it in something else. Sometimes they find it in the ordinary moments. Sometimes they find it as a mom, or sometimes they find it as someone that looks after their parents, whatever the case is. Like, I think it's so normal to have both. I think the risk comes in, or maybe let me say, there's risks to both. The risk of having like a very clear sense of purpose is like, what happens when that thing didn't work out the way that you thought it would? And what happens when you start questioning that? Like, if it's something that you've known from 3 years old, like, I'm going to be a doctor, and you said it over and over and your parents reinforced it, and then you did that. What happens when you're unhappy? What happens when you start questioning, like, is this for me? We often have identity crises when that happens. So that's just the risk there. But you can get identity crises either way. So, just whatever journey you happen to be on. But it's just also, I think, reminding ourselves that just because I had that as my purpose then doesn't mean it has to be my purpose forever. Like, I just think about this sometimes of how much I changed as a person between the ages of 20 and 30. Like, I genuinely feel like I'm a completely different person. So if I had to think of what my purpose was when I was 20 and think, oh, I have to carry on with that because that has always been my purpose, like, that would be a little bit strange, because it's like I am a different person now. So it's also totally okay that my purpose has evolved, and maybe even how I think about what it means to have a purpose, like, all of that can change. So that's just maybe I want to say the risk, but maybe like that might just be your work, is like, you might have more difficulty navigating it when you do have moments where you're uncertain, or when you're not fulfilled in this thing that you really were sure that is your purpose. And then on the other side of that, if you don't have that, one of the things that I think is like, the way that I think about it is, maybe let me put it like that. The way that I think about it is, I'm going to spend so much of my life working, like a crazy amount of hours in my career. So to me, I might as well make that something that is really fulfilling for me, something that is really like lights me up, is closest to what I can consider to be my purpose, or just something that feels meaningful to me, like whatever way I conceptualize meaning or purpose, and that might be different for different people. To me, I feel like work is a very worthwhile thing to do that with, because we spend so much time doing that. And some people, they want to work for a short amount of time, they want to work like crazy, they want to save up, and then they want to leave that. And that's totally relevant. But for me, I just feel like, I think this in many different ways. There's this quote of like, how we spend our days is, of course, how we spend our lives. And I think sometimes we live for like this future point where, I'm going to be able to retire or whatever. And I'm like, I just want to live now. Like, I want to have a life that feels fulfilling now. I want to be able to do those amazing things now. I don't want to put off living for a later point. But there are trade-offs to both ways of looking at it. And I think some people will gravitate more towards another. It's like, I kind of think about this as being a parent as well, like being a mom, for example, right? Like some people have such a strong desire to be a mom from like such a young age, and it feels very purposeful to them. And another person might have never really had that desire. And so they can't even really relate to the strong feeling of that. I think it's a similar thing with purpose. Like, I don't think we need to force people who don't have a purpose to feel purposeful. Like, come on, you have to feel purposeful. But also to know that when you have a very like rigid sense of that, you may find yourself having to grapple with loosening that a little bit or letting it evolve in some way.
Wow. I think it also just ties back to what we mentioned earlier about finding how you want to help and translating that into what you do. Because maybe the
Yeah,
purpose is not
exactly.
in the job, but the purpose is in how you affect society through the job.
Exactly. Absolutely. Yeah, I love that.
No. We've had a lot of good sound bites, a lot of good things to put on t-shirts in this episode.
I love it.
Where can the people find you? Where can the people find you
Yes.
online?
So if you are into Instagram, you can find me at clinician coach _Sarah. And then I also have my podcast, The Clinician's Journey. So you can subscribe to that. I have on my Instagram account, there is in my link in my bio is a free boundaries training for clinicians, because that's something that we all struggle with so much. And it's something that really can make a massive difference, and redefining what boundaries mean for us as well. So if clinicians want to go and download that training, they are more than welcome to do that.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Sarah. This was such a profound, insightful episode.
It's such a pleasure. I really enjoyed talking to you. And you ask such
Likewise,
great questions that
likewise.
you can see get me like talking and
Oh,
going on tangents. So that's great.
no, in my mind, I'm like, I hope I'm asking good questions.
Awesome to hear your questions and then like what that brings out in your guests. So it's amazing. And
Thank
I
you
just
so
love
much.
the
Thank
whole,
you.
yeah, like I said, the whole concept behind your podcast. I think normalizing that for clinicians, that they know they're not alone in that, and they know that nothing's gone wrong if they are imagining a different path for themselves. It's amazing.
No, thank you. Thank you so much. I feel like we are all building this new reality for how we need to think our careers one brick at a
Mm,
time.
exactly, exactly. We're not finding them anymore, we're creating them.
Exactly. We're career creators.
Exactly. I love that. Exactly. Thank
Oh,
you so much.
okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. To my dear listeners, thank you for tuning in. This was another very insightful episode. I hope you like it. Please do like, comment, and subscribe. Do all the good things. Follow Sarah, follow her podcast. She has great episodes, people pleasing, boundaries. She talks about everything that we as clinicians go through. And I will definitely see you here next week with a new guest. So, signed by Dr. Diane, this is your permission to be a different kind of doctor. Bye.